Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing another review of davros. Episode 2 of 4, Purity, starring Terry Malloy as Davros, with the slogan, "Nothing dies of old age on Skaro." Now, the reason as to why that is a thing is because, obviously, the planet of Skaro is pretty much ensconced and or somewhat obliterated and destroyed with radiation, which is fun, I guess. So you got Davros there, you got this, like, awesome sort of gas mask design sort of thing. The covers, as my friend Michael said, are very much retro, which I actually really like. They're really growing on me. You got the Big Finish logo there from the world of the BBC TV's show thing, Doctor Who. Then on the spine, which I didn't get to show you last time because I'm an idiot, it has davros, Purity, some barbed wire there, 1.2, which means Series 1, Episode 2, even though there's no other series after this one. But yeah, Big Finish logo there. Starring all these people, picture of Davros again, running time 72 minutes, so it is a bit shorter than the previous one by like 3 minutes. The bio, which I did read, originally I wasn't going to, but I was a little bit confused at the beginning of the story thing. But yeah, blue sort of design motif continues on the disc, and the writer's notes and the stuff there as well, of the cast and more people, info of like writers and so on and so forth. So if you're interested in all that, check that bit out. I'm going to try and keep this and the rest of davros, my individual reviews, as spoiler-free as possible. Sorry if that annoys you, but if it makes you feel any better, I will, when I've watched all 4 parts, do a overview of this series on my YouTube channel, which will be very spoiler-heavy and, yeah, contain a lot of, like, the oh shit moments, as it were, because there's a lot of them in this series so far. But yeah, I unfortunately didn't like this episode as much as the first one, Innocence, I think it was called, the first one. I think this one's a little bit of a step down. I mean, it's not terrible by any means. It's still a really good sort of strong story. It's just a bit more... It's weird, it feels like, even though it's episode 2 of a 4-part story, or 4 stories, it feels almost a lot more like Genesis to me, and that, whereas Innocence didn't. Innocence still felt very fresh and different and new, and I think I liked that. But it still felt like it was somehow in the Doctor Who universe and linked to the Doctor Who universe, with, say, something as a strong character like Davros. So Davros, I think, originally was 15 years old in Innocence. Now he's 30. And that really threw me off, so 15 years have passed. That really threw me off because the fact that I just thought logically from Innocence to this one, Purity, that we wouldn't have a time skip, you know, but we did, and there is a line where literally someone says something about him being, like Davros says something about almost turning 30, or turning 30, or I am 30, or whatever, something akin to that, to which, obviously, I didn't need to look at the bio on the back, but I did anyway. But yeah, I think this one is pretty brutal towards the latter end. There is another sort of, oh my god, cliffhanger type thing. You still get these sort of Daleks at the beginning, bookending the overall sort of story, and I'm curious where that will lead to. However, I think it is very much that, I think, in my head anyway, what I can muster is that Davros is sort of on trial. They're going over his sort of past before Genesis of the Daleks to indicate how they can succeed with future wars, and that, you know, and see how did Davros survive the war, the greatest war in Dalek history, presumably, because, you know, it's their origin story. It was like, you know, the war before all of the Dalek wars, really, because, you know, Davros made the Daleks. So how did he do that, and why did he do that, and stuff. And yeah, there's still a lot of character drama and conflict between characters. There's not as much action in this one as I think the first one had. I don't know, the action's quite spaced out between both releases, to be fair, but which is a shame because I think that's usually when I'm, surprisingly enough, most engaged with the story. But yeah, it was interesting. Again, there's bits of like the wasteland sort of thing. Terry Malloy gives a stellar performance. Davros has yet to be sort of in the Dalek wheelchair and or casing yet, so he's still able-bodied and that, so, but he is, as I say, a lot older. And what is odd though is Yarvel, his I want to say younger sister, is not in the military anymore, but Davros is, so there's almost like a role reversal from Innocence. Innocence was very much Davros being the scientist, Davros being hesitant to the war, Yarvel being like, no, I'm daddy's boy, or daddy's girl even, and I want to follow in his footsteps, and vice versa with Davros, but with his mum, and now, because, it's weird, because of the ending of Innocence, the people clearly around Davros were just like, okay, now you're in the military, which I thought was a bit odd, and that, but, I don't know, I mean, he still has, I guess, in that respect, it corners Davros as a character to push himself to the extreme for science, because he's not part of that club. If anything, he is ostracized from the scientific community and is a social outcast, but a genius social outcast, which is probably not a great thing in a wartime situation to have on your plate. And then, as I say, there's some interesting stuff towards the latter end. Holy crap, that bit at the end did very much make me feel very uncomfortable. And that, because there's a certain death, and that, as I say, was very visually striking to me, and that, yeah, Davros finally finds out, like, almost gets, not so much, well, one of the base ideas and core concepts for the Daleks, in this episode, which is the fact that hatred fuels sort of survival, although that's not a great thing to learn, but he is fascinated by that, and it's just like, oh my god, well, you know, you are to this certain character who I won't spoil who it is, but it's just like, oh my god, you still survived after all this time. I expected you to be dead. What the hell? How did you survive? To which he's like, well, you know, my urge to kill you and my rage against you fueled me, and he's just fascinated by that, and he finds out, as I say, he finds out what the core concept and ingredients, one of the core concepts and ingredient to what a Dalek should be, is from that sort of situation. However, that character does say, I hope you one day become how I am and perish in a not too dissimilar way, which that person does get what he wishes for in the end, really, doesn't he? However, Davros, yeah, is quite misguided and quite warped in this episode, to say the least, because there is another character who just wants to die because he's just been shot, and Davros is just like, well, you're weak, you should want to keep living, you know, with Thals, and that, Khaled's. Thals, I think. Is it Thals or Khaled's? I always get the two mixed up. But either way, you know, with Khaled's, or whichever race it is, you know, we don't do this, or we don't die, or tell other people to kill us and that, and take a dishonourable way out, a coward's way out, because, you know, it's again dishonourable. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should keep wanting to live. And that, and it's just weird because obviously, after watching a lot of other Doctor Who stories and listening to a lot of other Doctor Who stories, he isn't quite like that in those stories, but it's quite interesting to see that he's so determined to keep surviving, and another character does even ask him, you know, why do you still want to survive? Or how do you still have so much energy? And he's like, well, because I don't want to be a failure, I don't want to die in the mud, and that, you know, I have greater things to accomplish in life. He's not wrong, but those great things aren't quite great. But the thing is, Davros as a character is so warped by the situation that is the war that he just can't see an end to it. And it's weird because, again, at first in Innocence, he does seem to want to just not be part of the war, whereas by this episode, he is very much part of it and in the thick of it. However, I don't feel like there's a lot of character development between him being 15 and being very enthused by the science aspect to then being in the army and that. Like, he does take quite a bit of an army sort of soldier sort of thing role here, which is a bit odd, but then towards the latter end he becomes a bit more scientific. Like, he still does always say that he wants to do stuff scientific way, or that this could benefit the science and my research type thing, but he does essentially become a soldier, which is a bit odd, but I think it's because the Khaled and Orthal people, whichever one it is, don't want him to be a scientist because he's quite a sort of toxic and quite honestly more hassle probably for the people around him than he is worth. I mean, worth the price of it's not worth the risk to reward isn't worth it, you know, basically. But Davros is an egomaniac, so he can't see that. And I mean, to be fair, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, as it were, because his mum's a fucking sociopath. I mean, I hate saying this, but hopefully in episodes 3 and or 4 she dies because she's fucking insane. You know, she's a horrible character who is just warped and that, you know. And as I say, it's such almost the character is so contrast to how he is in Innocence. He is a lot more, no pun intended, innocent here. Whereas, yeah, what he does want is this sort of purity of his race, you know, and that. And again, there are a lot more. I see a lot more of Davros and who he is by Genesis in this than I did in Innocence. But yeah. So for me, overall, I'd give this one a 7 out of 10. Just a point below the previous story. It's not the best story ever of the series and that, but I mean, hopefully the next two are really good. I am enjoying the series, but I'm probably going to need a bit of a break because it is very bleak, very dark and eerie and that. But to be fair, what do you expect from a story based around such a maniacal, dark, warped character, really, and that. And as I say, everything is just so, you know, every aspect of his life is just so bleak and in such dark turmoil, toxic turmoil even, you know, whether it be work colleagues or, you know, family life or, you know, just everything, you know. And the one thing that makes him like push forward is science, and he's denied that, you know. And also, as I say, everyone around him seems to be dying, so yeah, which is weird considering all he wants is to preserve the purity of his race at any cost, regardless of if there's even anyone to preserve anymore or be pure anymore, you know. He just can't see the bigger picture, really. Which is scary, really, you know. But yeah, 7 out of 10 for me. Thanks for watching, comment, rate, and subscribe.